Well. I certainly hope everybody watching, if you are watching, this disgrace CNN put on last night with trying to call that a town hall. I hope if you watch that, you see what I'm talking about. I hope you noted how the last thing that was about last night was the safety of children. It had nothing to do with what was going on last night. Anyway, greetings, folks. As always, great to have you with us, and thank you for joining us. Telephone number, if you want to be on the program, Rush Limbaugh here at 800-282-2882, and the email address, lrushbo@eibnet.us. The media just cannot stop fawning over the courage and the high moral standing of the Parkland students, those who rushed the stage last night at the CNN so-called town hall and told NRA spokeswoman Dana Loesch that they wished she would burn, meaning literally burn or burn in hell. It wasn't just Parkland students in this crowd last night. I think it was about 5,000 people there. And the moderator, Jake Tapper, didn't do very much at all to keep the thing civil and to keep it going. Dana Loesch and Marco Rubio basically showed up to be thrown to the lions, is what happened last night. And that's exactly, there was no appreciation shown. There was no, you can't reach across the aisle to these people, folks. You cannot. It just isn't possible. They're not there for that. Those people in that crowd last night were not there for any kind of understanding. They were not there for any kind of agreement. They were not there to cross the aisle, compromise, any of that. They weren't there to learn anything. And they weren't there to get to the bottom of what happened. They weren't there to protect the lives of children. That's not what this thing was about last night. This thing was a vehicle for frustrated leftists to once again vent their hatred and vent their outrage over the fact that they were rejected at the ballot box in November of 2016. If you were one of them, you'd be mad, too. Everything they believe in bombs, blows up, and doesn't work, from Obama administration policies to ways they want to make children safer. I mean, if you boil it all down, the government cannot protect your kids at school. It's the government in charge of it. It's either a state government, elements of the national government, certainly elements of local government. They can't keep your kids safe. There have been no changes in techniques, stratagems to keep kids safe since Columbine. There have been no changes. All there has ever been is an outraged, petulant, childish cry and demand and a spewing of hatred for the NRA. Meanwhile, actually stopping these events, discussing ways to prevent and stop these events, is met with jeering and allegations of racism and bigotry, the usual insults that the left begins to shout. They are vacant intellectually, they are vacant in terms of ideas, and they are governed entirely by a continuing and building rage and hatred for anything that is in opposition to what they claim to believe. It was reported, was it not, early on that this perp, Nicholas Cruz was bullied in this school. Is that true, Mr. Snerdley? Have you read that that's one of the features? You read that he was the bully, that Nicholas Cruz was not necessarily bullied, that bullying Nicholas Cruz had nothing to do with turning him to the monster that he was the bully, that he was the aggressor. You sure you haven't seen anywhere that he was bullied? Do that. Double check for me. Find out. It shouldn't be difficult. A keyword search. at DuckDuckGo if you don't want your search to be tracked, or Google if you want Silicon Valley to know what you're thinking and doing. Just in your search term, just put Nicholas Cruz and bullying. See what you get. See what happens. We'll get into this in more detail, but it was exactly what I thought this event was going to be. It's exactly what I predicted that it was going to be. And I'm not being lazy and copping out by saying, hey, I told you it was going to be that way. That's not the point. The point is anybody could tell what this was going to be from the moment CNN puts their countdown clock up there. It didn't take long for anybody to realize what was really the purpose of this so-called town hall last night. And I asked the question, what's the point of showing up? And I know there are Republicans who say, Rush, we have to show up. We can't live in a vacuum here. We got to show up. We got to meet them. We got to try to reach them. We got to reach across the aisle. We got to try to make them understand. This is not the place to do it. An event sponsored by and moderated by CNN is not the place to do this. It's a setup. It always will be a setup. There is never a circumstance where it is otherwise. It's always a setup for the Republicans/conservatives who were there. So Mr. Snerdley's search is proving fruitful, because I thought I had seen this. Can you give me a source for what you're typing up there? Miami Herald. Nicholas Cruz was mocked, he was ridiculed, and he was bullied. He was ostracized for his odd behavior. Now, granted, this is not reported frequently because this guy is the villain, and reporting on him as a victim of being bullied, it makes him a victim. Obviously, we can't have that. But I just have to observe that there you have it, right smack dab in the middle of the Miami Herald. He was mocked, he was ridiculed, he was bullied, ostracized for his odd behavior. Could we throw in the mix that might be one of the reasons why he flipped out? Could we say that? Well, it is said about others quite frequently. They were bullied, they were mocked, they were laughed at, they were made fun of. If we say that, and if we point that out, then upon whom does that fall? Who did the bullying? Who was doing the mocking? Who was doing the ridiculing? And who was doing the laughing? Who was unmercifully making fun of Nicholas Cruz? I will leave it to you to answer the question. And then fill in the blanks. Because the leftist advocates here are solely focused on the NRA and want you to blame them and the gun. I am amazed. I really am at how little anger there is at the shooter. Look at the venom for Marco Rubio and Dana Loesch last night. Look at the literal, raw, almost out of control hatred for two people that had nothing to do with it. Except in the eyes of the media and some of the attendees last night, they had everything to do with it because one of them's a spokesbabe for the NRA and the other one takes money from the NRA. So in that convoluted world, it makes them responsible. In fact, not only is there no anger aimed at Nicholas Cruz, there is some sympathy. See, this is part of the way this is done. There can be only one villain here, and it has, well, two villains, the NRA and the guns. And then, of course, the subsets consisting of people accused of supporting the NRA and accepting money from the NRA. Why is there not much anger at the guy who actually murdered 17 students. But the level of outrage, I'll tell you something else. At this rally last night, and that's what it was. It was a rally. It was not a town hall. All 5,000 people there last night were not students. The entire student body at the Parkland High School was not there. Some were there. So I wonder how it was staffed. And yes, the audience was staffed. I wonder how it was assembled and put together. But regardless, whatever it was a setup. Now contrast that with the meeting in the White House yesterday afternoon that President Trump decided to televise in its entirety. That was something that we haven't seen before. It was an actual, it was heralded and promoted, advertised as a listening event, and that's exactly what the president did. He sat there and he listened to points of view from all over the place. And even those who were enraged and angry and still upset over what happened still thanked the president for hosting the meeting, thanked the president for his leadership. That meeting in the White House yesterday had to further enrage and anger the media and the left watching it, because they wanted the people in that meeting to be universally opposed to Trump and engaged in the same kind of hatred that CNN put on last night. They wanted to see that. They did it in the state dining room of the White House. But that is not what happened. They tell us that Donald Trump is unstable. They tell us that Donald Trump is erratic, that Donald Trump is unpredictable, that Donald Trump is uncontrollable, that Donald Trump is a ticking time bomb. Whatever it is, they use to describe a volatile, out-of-control personality. And yet, what did everybody see? We saw a calm, respectful president of the United States who genuinely seemed engaged in problem solving. We saw an adult. And, I saw there was an interview after the event. And I was watching it. I think it was CNN, actually. They had some guests on there. So, we haven't seen anything like this in the White House in 10, 15 years. We haven't seen anything like this. He was complimentary about it. I said, wait a minute. We saw this all kinds of times when Obama did these kinds of things all the time, except, Obama did a job summit, summit on the stimulus bill, a summit there, summit there. Every one of them was about Obama. And I found it interesting, this guest did not remember that Obama did a bunch of these kinds of meetings in the White House. Remember the meetings Obama was famous for? I remember Thomas L. Friedman of the New York Times attended the one on jobs. But Obama did a job summit. Might have been the state dining room as well. Obama had a bunch of people. He assigned them into groups of 4 and then sent each group to a corner of the room where they were to meet, come up with solutions, and then return to the center of the room at 5 p.m. to report to Obama, at which time Obama announced the problems solved. I got the biggest kick out of that because it was classic liberalism. Don't solve anything. Just talk about it. Put people who are allegedly the smartest people ever, put them in the room, have them sit there and talk about things and announce their conclusions with Obama as headmaster accepting the recommendations at the end of the day at 5 p.m. Problem solved. Media talked about it. It was the most wonderful thing. After every one of them, the media was practically in permanent orgasm on the days that Obama did these things. And yet there's a guest on CNN saying we haven't seen anything like this in the White House 10 and 15 years, maybe longer. CNN last night was a facilitator of and a promoter of rage, of anger, and deranged, unhinged, barely civil behavior. There was no intention on the part of anybody in that room to listen to anybody who was not on the same page. If you watched the Trump meeting in the White House, it felt like a conversation, and every person that spoke was treated with respect and was not derided, was not mocked, was not laughed at, was not made fun of. Many were applauded. It was real. It wasn't scripted. It was real and it was genuine, and you could tell that the people who were there participating knew it was real. They knew that they weren't props. None of them acted offended. None of them insulted Trump by rote. And there were a lot of Parkland students there. And not all of them are supporters of Trump, but every one of them was respectful. You didn't see any respect at all last night on CNN. I'm sure that hard left viewers, socialists, communists, Democrats were probably thrilled with what happened on CNN last night. But nothing was accomplished. I'd take it back. A lot was accomplished. The NRA was bashed. The career of Marco Rubio was bashed, as the Republicans, conservatives were bashed, were insulted, were the targets of a barely controllable rage. But in terms of having anything meaningful toward a solution, the CNN event may as well not have even happened. Take a brief time out. We'll continue after this. Don't go away.